Bum bum. Okay, we are live. I think. Should be anyways. Okay, so we're live. Let me do a sound test. Hoosier Hardware. Quick sound check. Okay, so we're good to go with that. And with us being live now, I think it's about time we go ahead and roll that intro. Da, 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 Hoosier Hardware, blah, blah, blah. So, today we are talking about, as soon as, anyways, I get this tweeted out. So, get that tweeted out. So here we go. Today is all about the Google announcements from yesterday, specifically as it relates to especially the Pixel. I'm going to spend most of the time talking about Pixel because that's the one that I think most people, including myself, are the most excited about. But in fact, you can also see up here along the top of the screen here that they had more than just the Pixel to talk about, and I will mention some of those things today. The first one is the Pixel. The Verge always has, but again had great coverage yesterday for the Pixel. So let's just sort of scroll down here a little bit. The big feature, or not big feature rather, but the big thing with the new Pixel is that it is indeed Google's first real homemade phone. The Nexus line was pretty close, but the Pixel phone is really the first foray for Google into the smartphone industry. It comes in several flavors. There's a few different colors. There is the silver, blue, and black, and they come in either 32 or 128 gigabyte versions. I would have really liked to have seen a 64 gigabyte version, or even have it start at 64 gigs instead of 32, simply because I almost feel like 32 isn't quite enough, and 128 is a huge amount. My current Nexus phone has 64 gigs. I wanted that version because that's the price balance that I would have liked to have seen. I personally, and I will be covering this extensively once it actually is available to the public. I pre-ordered mine because it's going to be my daily driver. I use Project Fi, so I went ahead and pre-ordered the Pixel phone. I will be getting rid of my Nexus 6P. So I'll be doing a complete review. I'll also be doing a camera review. And I will be doing, obviously, the unboxing as well as probably some other things. I will probably do the Google Assistant review. So I have probably at least, at a minimum, of 4 videos coming up towards the end of this month that will be looking at the Pixel. And because I mentioned that the 32 gigs just seems like it's not quite enough for me, I went ahead and got the 128 gig version and in the black, the quite black color, very descriptively named. The big feature, other than the camera experience, which I'll get to in a minute, is sort of, or the camera's sort of a big deal. For me, it's less of a big deal because I don't actually do that much camera shooting anyways with my smartphones. Some people will be greatly into that if it's a great camera, and other people won't really mind so much. But my big thing, or the big thing for me, is the Google Assistant, which is already available on the Allo messaging app. But the idea here is with the long press of the home button, you will bring up the Google Assistant, and you'll be able to converse more free-flowing than with Google Now. So it'll be able to do things. It'll be able to be integrated into other apps. You'll be able to do pretty cool things like get a restaurant reservation, maybe call a Uber, throw things up on your Chromecast, all without ever actually interfacing with the individual apps. Like if Chromecast would be like YouTube, or later on, hopefully Netflix has this availability. If it works as well as I hope it does, it'll be really cool. Will it be revolutionary and just like blow my mind? That I strongly doubt. Because I already don't use Google now tons. I use it occasionally. But who knows, maybe with Google Assistant right there, it might become a little bit more useful for me to actually use that on a regular basis. Another feature for the camera savvy or camera hungry people is the endless cloud storage with photos. You will also get full resolution pictures stored for free for life with the purchase of every pixel. So any shots you take on your Pixel are going to be stored online and free forever. That's pretty boss. I'm not going to lie, if I was a big camera aficionado, that would be a big feature for me. So I would definitely be big into that. Other things is the virtual reality. I'm not even really going to talk about that because frankly the smartphone virtual reality at this point to me is still more of a gimmick. Down the line, virtual reality may be a bigger thing, especially for phones, but in my mind right now anyways, it's more important, or rather less important than the other features that Google is bringing out with the Pixel. Some of the things I'm really curious about that they didn't hit on a ton, I am very, very interested to see, or rather hear, the speaker quality of the Pixel. The 6P has really, really solid sound quality from the front-firing speakers. The Pixel uses a couple of like iPhone-style bottom-mounted speakers. Very curious to see how loud they get, which is the number one thing for me. I really like speakers that get loud. Even if they don't sound great, one of my big problems with smartphones is they don't get loud enough. So hopefully that is at least solid with the Pixel. And the screen resolution, I got the Pixel XL, so I got the 5.5-inch Quad HD display instead of the 5-inch 1080p display. We'll see how that goes. Battery life is one that I'm very interested to see how it competes with the Nexus 6P. Typically the Nexus 6P, because I actually work in an area with terrible coverage, or at least not very good coverage, typically it drains my battery a little bit faster, and my 6P is sort of struggling to make it through the full day. Fortunately, because of the way charging is done and the way charging is, it's not a big deal because I can plug it in and get quite a bit of charge very, very quickly. So, and that carries through. I believe Google said 7 hours of battery life on 15 minutes of charge, which is pretty incredible. The XL has a 3450 milliamp hour battery. What's the Nexus 6? Nexus 6P. Oh my gosh, I can't type. Battery. So the XL has actually it has the exact same size of battery as the Nexus 6P, so I'm very, very curious to see. And they have the same resolution screen, so theoretically there shouldn't really be much of a difference in battery life between the two, but we'll sort of see about that. Okay, so moving on, we'll want to pop over here to the Google Store, because the Google Store has all these new items are available for pre-order, including the Pixel, which we can just hop into that real quick, and if we choose options, we'll go with the XL. But the limited edition Really Blue really actually looks pretty good on the back. I just don't know how I feel about the front being white. I guess it's not a bad thing, or I'm not upset by it, but I went with the timeless black look because black always looks good. And I am hopeful, very, very hopeful, that D-Brand comes out with a skin for this, because I'm not really sure how I feel about the dual glass aluminum back to it, and a skin would cover up that glass really nice as well as the aluminum. I've ran a skin on my 6P for the most of its life, and it's held up really, really well. And it has protected the phone really, really well on the back as well. So I will probably, in all reality, eventually get a dbrand skin. I also noticed that the 128 gig is out of stock right now for the XL, and the 5-inch one, it is not out of stock, however. So something to consider. I'm also really interested in it, and I'm not getting my hands on both of these, at least not right now, and I highly doubt I'll be able to down the road. But I am very interested also to see how the battery life between the XL and the regular Pixel stacks up, whether that 1080p screen will help save battery, but it has a significantly smaller battery as well. I'm curious to see how that holds up as we go along and as we start to see reviews. Next big thing, and this is the one that I'm second most excited about, one of the things that I'll probably eventually get for my own home is the Google Home speaker. This is going to compete directly with the Amazon Echo and the Alexa assistant. Google Home will integrate the Google Assistant into the speaker, and you can in fact get multiple of these speakers and have them working together, where if you're closer to one, only the one closest to you will answer as you use the keyword to access Google, which is a sort of a super cool feature. And also the design aesthetic, the ability to switch out the bottoms of it will also be important, at least to me, or in my mind. Very curious to see how well this catches on, if it is as useful. This is another review that I hope to have down the road. I'm not going to get this like immediately, but I'm hoping that I will be able to get it shortly. And we'll see how that goes. But I would like to have a home speaker just so I can sort of see how it goes and see if it is good as or good / as useful as I hope it will be. The bases, the interchangeable bases, are coming soon. Right now you're sort of stuck with the white and gray bottom, but eventually you can get a white bottom, orange bottoms, blue bottoms, purple, black, a few different colors there. Next up that I want to mention is the Daydream View. I'm not really that into VR at all. I don't really know a whole lot about VR. It's only $80, and that should make it a little bit more accessible to some people. Not really sure that that's ever going to catch on, at least not right now. It may take significantly longer. So another thing to sort of look out for. The Chromecast Ultra, which is a $70 Chromecast, which is doubling the $35 price point of the current generation Chromecast. However, this one will support 4K video. It's also supposed to be much faster than the old ones. First of all, I really like Chromecast in general. I have a first generation Chromecast and I absolutely love it. It's a phenomenal streaming stick. What I'm curious to see is the old Chromecast, whether you're buying them secondhand or directly from Google still. Unless you're streaming 4K, you're probably better off getting one of the old version Chromecast instead of the new ones. The cool thing about the Chromecast Ultra is it also has an Ethernet port for you to, in case your Wi-Fi isn't strong enough to stream that 4K quality content that you're wanting to, then you can just run a wired connection straight into your Chromecast and allow it to use that as its network. So that's sort of an interesting solution. In a world of wireless, it's curious that they would do that, but it's also not a bad idea. Again, sort of these hardware announcements are all fitting together in that you have the Google Home speaker, which is going to be able to queue up Chromecast videos and send it directly to your TV, provided, I assume, obviously, that your TV is already on, which would mean the Chromecast is already on. But you'll be able to just voice command the Chromecast from your speaker to go ahead and display whatever on your TV. Same thing with the Pixel phone. You should be able to use the assistant, I would think anyways, to just queue up those any sort of video directly to the TV if you have a Chromecast. The theme yesterday with Google was that everything is sort of playing together nicely. Everything sort of has almost like everything is better if you integrate the other parts of the Google ecosystem with it. So Same, and they took it a step further with the Google Wi-Fi, again, replacing your home router. These are more like, this router is more like an access point type thing where the access points will intelligently hand off your Wi-Fi between themselves to give you a better, more seamless experience, especially if you have a bigger home where Wi-Fi coverage can be spotty in certain areas. The idea there is, again, you're going to drive the wireless experience is going to be driven by the Wi-Fi, so they want a good solution there. And you'll also notice that the Google Wi-Fi router it's sort of not, it's a very unassuming little disc, whereas a lot of routers are really kind of ugly. I have a Comcast one over to my right and behind me. It's sort of an ugly solution. This is not the case with Google's Wi-Fi solution. So I'm curious to see, again, reviews on the Wi-Fi solution. And then together, the ecosystem all sort of plays nicely. So brings me into the last little segment here that I want to talk about. And that is, should you, and granted, this is all very, very much conjecture, should you buy into Google's ecosystem? For me, because I've already bought in pretty much hook, line, and sinker into most of Google's ecosystem as it is, whether that be because I have YouTube Red, I run everything off of my Gmail accounts as far as any sort of email solutions go. I have a Chromecast. I don't have any, Apple products. I'm very focused into the Google ecosystem. For me, some of these hardware solutions make a lot of sense, especially the home speaker and the Pixel phone, which I don't know. I'm gonna do my best to get the most out of it. It's a big leap for me to buy an expensive phone, and that's the big difference between the Pixel phones and the old Nexus line, is that the Pixel phones start at $650. The old Nexus lines always started much lower than that, especially back in the days of the Nexus 5 and Nexus 4. Even the 5X started considerably cheaper. And there are a lot of competing Android smartphones that are very, very good in that budget arena. The OnePlus 3 is probably the reigning champ. And in fact, I would argue that the OnePlus 3 benefits greatly from Google moving more away from the budget line into the premium line, because OnePlus may have been seeing some of their numbers cannibalized by the Nexus line. And at this point, in my mind anyways, the OnePlus phone, the OnePlus 3 rather, is probably the best budget-oriented smartphone you can find, unless you're going for the Nexus 6P at this right now. So the Pixel is squarely aimed at the iPhone, as well as, and this is the interesting thing too, is that Google, by producing a premium phone, is also going to eat up some of the other Android smartphone sales. In fact, there's a good chance that it'll eat up more smartphone sales from the Android side than it will the iPhone side, because if I'm already in the Android ecosystem, it's not an issue to switch from an Android phone to just a different Android phone. It's a bigger issue to switch from an Apple phone to an Android phone. It's going to take more to pry me away from the Apple ecosystem, especially if I've invested much in it. Whereas, if I've already invested in the Android ecosystem, if I have a Galaxy S6 and maybe I'm ready for an upgrade, this may be more compelling for me. So I'm really curious to see if there's much movement in the market share. Now, I do want to be clear about this. Google is not aiming to steal the market from Apple this year. The Pixel phone and this whole ecosystem is about getting more of an Apple-esque look to Android. And by that I mean Google is trying to control their ecosystem a little bit more tightly, much in the way that Apple has. One of the big flaws of Android, and one of the things that set it so far behind Apple for so long, I would argue until at least Jelly Bean, probably more like Kit Kat, with the operating system in general, was that because everything was so loose and everybody had its own take on Android, and the Nexus line was never a seller, it was more of an idealistic view for the most part. Updates were always really, really poorly done. Android in general didn't really mature nearly as fast as iOS did as an operating system. Now, it pushed the boundaries much more quickly and much harder than Apple did in a lot of things. For example, Apple phones still don't have widgets on your home screens. You still can't organize your home screens exactly as you want on the Apple ecosystem. I feel like Android has a lot more to offer than does Apple for a lot of people, if not most. Well, really, I would even say most people. The problem is that because the way Android phone makers do their updates and updates have been handled, for the average person, it's just much easier to go with Apple because everything just works with Apple, and that's always sort of been the mantra behind Apple, is it just works. Well, hopefully, especially with the updates being done in the background now for the Pixel phone, and with Google having tight control over it, where when Google pushes an update, you'll get that update very, very quickly, much in the same way that Apple does their updates for their iPhones. Those people, those folks that go with the Pixel phone should have a big edge. And in fact, I also believe that they'll have a big edge over other Android phone makers just because they'll be tightly integrated into Google's ecosystem. I am very curious to see how Samsung responds to this, especially on the update front, because it's going to be really tough for them to make a compelling sales pitch if the Pixel phone performs about as well as the Galaxy S7, for example, in most metrics, but then the Pixel phone will have those quicker updates. It'll be better supported. It'll be more tightly integrated into the Android ecosystem. I'm really curious to see what Samsung does with that, or if they start to push away a little bit from Android. I know there were rumors forever that Tizen was the way they were going, and that sort of never materialized. And in fact, I think it would be very, very, very difficult for them to go that route now, just because Android has such a huge market share, and so does iOS. So that's sort of my first look, my first take about Google's hardware announcements from yesterday. We'll see. Like I said, I have 4 videos at least coming with the Pixel phone. I'm super, super curious. There may be some other shorter videos, like I may run a speed test, it versus the Nexus 6P. Phone Buff does a lot of stuff like that, but I may run one of my own just to sort of see the difference between Android 7.1 and Android 7.0 versus a new phone and an older 6P and all that. So we'll have to sort of play that by ear. That's coming down the road here in probably a couple weeks till I get my hands on the phone, so my unboxing will probably be just over 2 weeks away. I believe they're supposed to ship October 20th, which means hopefully I get it on October 21st. If that would be the case, oops. If that would be the case, then I would be getting my phone on a Friday, maybe a Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. So after all that, after Google's, all their announcements, that's what we're left with. Pixel phone, Google Home speaker, Chromecast, a new router, new VR, all this, the Daydream VR rather. All very exciting for Google fanboys. I would count myself as a Google fan. I don't know if I consider myself a fanboy because I do believe really that they put out better products than Apple. I don't think it's more of to me a fanboy, and this is getting into a whole different idea, but to me a fanboy will follow their company regardless, whereas a fan or just an objective person will come to the conclusion based on evidence that that company is producing better equipment. Now, the fanboy argument can be made. I pre-ordered it. It's not smart to pre-order things. I do not recommend that you pre-order anything, ever, unless even if you are solely invested in it. Don't pre-order things. I am weak. Google is just overwhelming with their performance and their display and their presentation, and I'm weak. But anyway, that's Hoosier Hardware for this week, guys. If you like this video, you like this sort of free-flowing content where I just sort of ramble about random crap for a while, like button and subscribe button are down below. I encourage you to hit those. I've been very happy, by the way. A big shout out and a big thanks to my subscribers. That number has been slowly but steadily climbing over the past month or so since I've been really stepping up my production of some videos. So that's awesome, guys. I really appreciate the support. Keep that coming. If you want to follow me, my Twitter handle is right down there. Yeah, right down there. So Twitter is at Hoosier Hardware. That's the best way to reach me. Comments are good. I usually read comments every few days, when the notifications pop up for me. But please, please, please follow me on Twitter. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I cannot wait to get my hands on the Pixel phone in just a couple weeks. So let's go ahead and roll that that intro again. Oh, look. There we go. Everyone, have a wonderful night.